Ask that everybody stand for the pledge of allegiance. I need you to please lead us with the ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States.
Please call the roll.
You can let me know if I say your last name correctly, that would be great. Aldag. Here. Griffin. Here. Hubbard. Here. Michaels.
Present.
Schlapp.
Here.
Semi-Para.
Here.
Eo.
Here.
Keating. Here. Di Gregorio.
Thank you. We have 3 sets of meeting minutes under item C to approve this evening. Our work session on January 23rd and the council meeting that followed that, as well as the council work session on February 5th.
I'll move to approve the minutes as presented.
Moved by Griffin.
I'll second.
I want to thank you both. There anything? No.
My only comment is on page 11 at the very end for our work session. We had that Saturday morning. It says we adjourned at 7:03 p.m. 12 something.
That was a long meeting. Good.
Yeah, thank you for catching that. Other council member comments? Good. Please call the vote to approve the meeting minutes. One correction.
Semi-Para.
Yes.
Schlapp.
Yes.
Hubbard.
Yes.
Griffin.
Yes.
Aldag.
Yes.
Michaels.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Minutes are approved. We have no prearranged participation this evening, so we're down to non-arranged participation. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak this evening? Please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, I'm Donna Fisher, and number 3035 Inverness. When I sat over there, this was great to have us in here and people got up and looked right at, looked in me and I, we can't see a thing. No matter which seat I choose, this much of you are blocked out. So in your wisdom for the future, maybe you will find a creative way to do it. I don't know if to the side is the answer. I kind of thought about it, but I don't know. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
John, nice to see you, Jim.
Welcome.
Hi.
Good to see you.
John Coy, 8825 Trinkley Road. I'm here to speak regarding the new ordinance that's going to be considered and how it affects my property at 8033 Huron Street. I want to comment that I appreciate the planning commission including it into a zoning that allows the continuation of multifamily. And that's pretty much it. If there are any questions, oh, wow. Thank goodness.
Can I just clarification of the apartment building on
Yes.
Huron Street?
Yes.
Yes. So when I was in your chair 20 years ago, we were dreaming of this. And so it's a privilege to be here now. Congratulations.
We have to give you a tour, John. Thank you.
I'm down with the open house.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak this evening?
Just need to. Kane.
Yes, doesn't look like any answer ready to life. Thank you. Okay. Do we have any submitters to declare? None, we're down to approval of the agenda. Motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Or. Moved by Dan. That's not. Thank you both. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, please call the vote to approve the agenda.
Aldag.
Yes.
Semi-Para.
Yes.
Schlapp.
Yes.
Griffin.
Yeah.
Michaels.
Yes.
Hubbard.
Yes.
Eo.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. We have no public hearings this evening. We have our upcoming meeting list as general communication. Any comments on the meeting calendar? No comments, no changes, great. We'll jump to our first. Tim, with you at 7:05.
Good evening, how's everybody doing today?
Good.
Good.
Thank you.
So obviously, this is a 3-week report instead of 2 weeks. Any questions I can take in right now? I got a couple things that,
Wow.
This is sort of just a detail, so like fixed brake on, brake light on the 1 ton and like fixed snowplow, I feel like. And I don't mean to, you know, I'm not comparing, but I feel like, and I could be wrong, did you fix that or did you take it to Mark's Auto to fix that?
no, they fixed it.
Okay, great, I just wanted to make sure that wasn't, you weren't just saying.
Yeah, no, usually what will happen is, and because I look this over once I get them in and stuff, and I look them over and, you know, I'll add things and take things away too, and if it's in-house, I usually just leave it like that. If it's somewhere else, you know.
I guess I was just more curious about what you guys were doing on the vehicles and how, what your ability to, you know, do that cost savings was, so that's great to hear, thank you.
No problem. Sales? Okay, got word that they're gonna go, just start tomorrow, be mobile to fall. Hopefully finish that up in the next couple days. Hopefully, so tomorrow they'll be able to finish the VFDs out at Ryan Drive. They have one more to do, they would have gotten them done today, but they had, they ran into a little bit of a snag. But it's very nice to go there and when they turn off, I don't hear a slam water hammer anymore. It's nice and smooth, so that's kind of nice. We're dealing with the sewer on Parker, which is the force main. They are, because they're doing the culvert, we're gonna look to maybe, not us, but the schools will have to look, or the county have to look to relocate. We're looking right now, just trying to find, there's supposed to be a manhole over there. We're trying to look for it, see if we can get it out. Hopefully it's deep enough we don't put it forward. So it's not our problem, but I still want to keep that relationship. It goes to our utilities and make sure it's good communication.
Yeah.
So it used to be that the schools wasn't part of the MISD system. If they were part of the MISD system, they would be aware of what projects are going on. So the line you're talking about goes from the high school down Parker Road and ties into our gravity sewer down Dexter Chelsea. So obviously you got a call or you got something indicating they were doing something.
So, yeah,
Get that out.
and you know, I try to keep up on that, especially when you were here, and then it was easier for me because I was in the field and I seen those things, and I would make those calls. Not being in the field, sometimes it's a little more difficult because I don't see their day with them. So I've already talked to those guys about that and let them know from here on. But usually what we would do is we get a missing call, as you know, we call at schools, let them know that. This one it didn't. So it's not our fault by any means, but I'm looking at that in the future, being conscientious about that, so. Everybody passed the CDL tests and they have CDLs now. That was a good thing. We received the new lawnmower the other day and we're looking at the forklift on Thursday. Just a lot of minutes. All right.
All good. Thank you, Tim. Next up is our community development manager. Michelle, how are you?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you. How are you today, John?
Good.
Good. How's the rest of council tonight?
Good.
Excellent. Okay, it's been a Monday, hasn't it? Okay, so you have my report in front of you. You've also got some questions that were answered as part of the supplement. Do you have any questions for me?
Do you have an update on 3536 Dover? What?
36, I believe that was in the last report and supplement, if the case is not mitigated.
That's what okay, it was in here and I just have not updated since, and I
Oh, I
called.
didn't take it out of my report.
I thought I'd seen a different update where it was like resolved, but then
It
it's done
is.
again.
It is, yep, it's resolved, so I'll make sure that I get it out of.
It's like in the not updated.
Okay.
Thank
I
you.
can get that out.
Was there another hand over here? No. Others? No other updates?
No, no real update. I mean, take a look at the New Horizon 5G poll. It came in slightly darker than what the color sample showed, but actually, I think it ends up blending much better. It's not as obtrusive as I thought it would be, but hopefully service in the downtown will be better overall. I don't know when they're gonna do the one in front of 7445 Ann Arbor Street, which is in front of the Blue Water Building. But as soon as we find out, we'll know about it, because AT&T has to provide us with certain information first. That really is all that I have. Unless you have any questions. Like I said.
I will just say that I have heard from Verizon people that they were having some serious issues in the past, like the recent past, and I haven't heard it, and it's my mother. So I haven't heard anything recently, so whatever they did must be.
It must be working. All right, well, that's all I've got for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, keep up the good work, thank you. We're down to our written sheriff report that's in the package. Does anyone have any comments or questions on that? All items up. Okay, we'll keep moving. All the way down to city manager report. That's
All right, so I did include in my report a couple of items that were in the work session agenda packet. I don't know if anybody had any comments or thoughts. If not, that's fine. But one of the items was the farmers market manager is looking to potentially make some changes to the farmers market with regard to hours of operation and times of the season for the Tuesday market. Because we have seen, I think since I've been here, that the Tuesday market has always been slow. And we've tried different things to, you know, build attendance, build vendors, and it just always appears to be slow in May and always appears to be slow in October. We might end up with 3 vendors and a handful of patrons. And so the current farmers market manager, and this has been a recommendation from previous farmers market managers, who have always kind of been, well, you know, let's keep trying stuff, let's keep trying to find ways to build attendance, and there's nothing that's ever really taken off. So what we're looking to do is just shorten the season to June to September and change the hours of operation.
some more midday.
Correct.
Can I ask you a quick question about the hour of operation? I think that's a great idea. I mean, if it's, that's the data, that's the data. But 2 PM to 6, from 2 PM to 6 PM to 10 AM to 2 PM.
Mhm.
Are you at all concerned that it's like a complete shift? I mean, could you do like 11 to 3 just in case? I mean, is that something you guys have thought about?
So the current work manager has indicated that the greatest attendance is like at the end of the, or sorry, at the beginning of their current day. So like right around the 2 PM
And like,
slot.
again, that's what I'm getting at, is like, what if somebody shows up at 2:05
Mhm.
and and they just haven't gotten the memo somehow, so maybe in the first shift, you might wanna think about.
And having some more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can talk to her about that. So we are also taking applications for community garden and farmers market. We have a public open house set for February 22nd for 35:15 from 4 PM to 7 PM if anybody's interested in attending. We're trying to get the word out. I believe it was included in the last newsletter. We started advertising it through the email update. Today we went ahead and made a purchase of a vinyl fountain, which I believe the DPW plan to install this spring. Once the weather gets a little bit warmer, we can actually open the fountain up in Monument Park. On the update around supplement, there is an update for the bicentennial. The bicentennial group through the Arts Culture Heritage Committee are recommending a slogan. And I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on their proposed slogans. One being, 3 sentences and one being 2, but celebrating our past, living our present, embracing our future, is what they've come up with.
One second.
You like the shorter one,
Yeah, we're celebrating our past, embracing our future.
little snappier.
To me, it is, yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, I like the completeness of the first one. I appreciate, 3 times like they mentioned, but the second one.
And then we put out the Danway Road mill and overlay out to bid today. That includes Danboy, Lexington, or the portion of Lexington from Danboy out to Dexter Ann Arbor. Curb and gutter and ground farms and the crosswalk in Dexter Ann Arbor and Edison, or Ann Arbor Street and Edison. So.
So now,
If we can go back to the slogan, the Bicentennial Committee and Arts and Culture Committee is looking for our input, so they can actually start using and putting it on things, their marketing stuff, so if there, anything want to take back to say this is definitely the one we like more than the other.
does someone want to make a motion?
I mean, if that's what we need to do, I would make a motion that we adopt the second one.
Is there a second or support? Okay, motion by Lon, second by Jamie. For bicentennial slogan to be celebrating our past, embracing our future. Any discussion? Please call the vote to approve.
Slater,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Albeck,
Yes.
Schlaf,
Yes.
Michaels.
Yes.
Keel.
Yes. Motion carries. There we go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good work.
Thank you. And so the last update that I have for you is, and I want to be careful in how I talk about this because it's ongoing. For 3045 Broad Street, our partner hired a subcontractor who went out to do soil borings and drillings into 3045 Broad. And potentially created some issues on the site that we're working through. We're working with our environmental consultant and our attorney to talk about what potential impacts are from those borings and how we get it as quickly as possible. I just wanted to make sure council was aware that something happened and we're working to address it.
Yeah, was that part of the barrels? There was,
So the barrels is soil from, what was taken out when they did the first round of drills. So it's my understanding that today, or over the weekend, a dumpster was delivered. And the barrels have been secured to that dumpster for future disposal. Disposal or testing.
So when you do a boring, there's a sleeve that goes down, it takes out the soil to be tested, so that's taken off already. But the residual from the watering down comes out, and so that's the soil that's in the 55 gallon drums, the residual from the drum. The contractor did cap. There has to be.
that's better than what I was worried about, somebody dumping something there, I'll see if I have to pick up.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any update on the Dexter and Arbor Meadow intersection, OHM?
So I know that they have been working on it. And we have a, update meeting coming up, I think, the end of this week with OHM, where it's gonna be a topic. Getting, you know, where are you guys at and what's the next step?
It's good that the permit for the connector was issued, you know?
Yeah, so we
Yeah,
can,
that's good.
we should be able to move forward with, issuing the bid for that here shortly as well.
It's great. Great. Any other questions for Jessica? John, my report, don't have too much to add to what's there. I do have an additional meeting scheduled with, Coy Vaughn, coming parks. In the recreation department. I'm going to be introducing him to, Jim Carson and Gordon Smith from the Dexter Senior Center. Coy reached out and is interested in what we're doing and what we're talking about in terms of the rec authority and the whole senior center area. So, this Friday, I'm going to introduce the three of them. Did not have that scheduled. And then on March 11th, consider that a firm date for our next full setting session. If you don't have that on your calendar, please add it. We'll do a similar start time. I'm not sure, is that a forum date? Does anybody know? We can start at 9 if it isn't.
What form is usually the first Saturday?
Okay, well, we have to get- If
Saturday.
there's no forum, we'll start at 9 instead of 9:30. If there's a forum, we'll start at 9:30 or 9:45. Anybody have any questions for me? I appreciated the discussion at our last workshop. I thought it was really good. Are there any council member reports? Zach?
Last week I attended the Michigan Municipal League Legislative Committee kickoff in the new visitor center, just in the Capitol. It's a fun room. Never been there. It's actually modern and have bathrooms that work and stuff. The big takeaway is that this next legislative session, there's going to be a lot of interest in energy put into housing at the state level, into energy and into the environment. This short term, there are going to be two bumps to revenue sharing with local governments. There's a surplus in the budget this year, about 9 million, give or take, depending on how rough you want to round it. Part of that is one-time funds, so there's going to be a partial bump revenue sharing for local units of government this year, and there's also going to be a sustained increase going forward in the future. We did not, and they actually announced at this that they had awarded the Spark grants in the morning. Apparently there were $300 million worth of requests put in and $30 million worth of funding. We're not poor enough to qualify for those 21 communities that got it. We're way beyond that. But it did seem like from the legislators that spoke that there's interest in doing that in the future. For this next term, part of the budget package is going to include 3 pots of money, $50 million to go to state grants for housing projects, $50 million for placemaking project grants, and $500 million into a SOAR fund, which is intended for consolidating sites for development and doing site work to prepare stuff. So site consolidation. So it was exciting to be there when there was going to be surplus money instead of telling us how much they're going to cut. From the local level, they did seem with the committee I'm on, economic development and land use, that there still probably is going to be a push to take away local control of short-term rentals because there's been so much money and effort put in it from realtors. Our next dedicated meeting is March 20th, I believe. That's it.
Thank you for that update. Justin?
Just real quick, just follow up on the Spark grant. So like next time we did get the Spark grant for this first round, which I believe was $15 million. So there's gonna be 2 additional rounds of $25 million each, that we will apply for. We'll keep going for it, and, we're not going to get specifically told or given specific information on how we did. But they're releasing a general set of, here's how you can improve your applications, and we're gonna get our score. So like, they will tell you, you scored well in these areas and not in these areas, but we'll get our overall score. And hopefully we can see where we can improve.
Any other council member reports? Okay, we're at top of page 3 of our agenda for the consent agenda. There are 3 items on the consent agenda. Is there a council member that would like to move the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the 3 items on the consent agenda. Bills and payroll in the amount of $832,000 of $731.51. Water and wastewater chemical bid award and setting public hearing for hotel maintenance ordinance.
Motion by Rob. Just works.
Second.
That's not, thank you. Call the vote to move the consent agenda.
Griffin. Yeah. Schlapp,
Yes.
Semi Pharaoh,
Yes.
Albeck,
Yes.
Michaels,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Thank you, motion carries. We're down to unfinished business, discussion of council rule. Yeah, thanks for your effort to finish for another version. Turn it over to you.
Yep. Well, I got to speak with a couple of council members and I think I addressed some of the changes or the questions that have been brought up. I don't know if anyone wants me to run through the thing. I would suggest if we do adopt it, a couple of changes as it is here. That on page 120, declaration of conflicts of interest be moved up to match what our current thing has been with the past change. That on page 177 under voting, majority vote have some language to the effect of an affirmative vote of council of all members of council shall be required for adoption of an ordinance. This is not subject to suspension of rules. Other actions shall only require affirmative vote of those members of council present.
Zach, what page is that on again?
127 I4.
Okay.
And on page 130, just striking out the little placeholder tags under same principles. And then on page 132, there's no language in here, but Mr. Summerfield's version has reference to contacting city's legal counsel that should be plugged in there. So that's all I'm gonna say if anyone has questions.
Comments, questions? So Zach, I read through this, but I need to print them out and place them side by side with the current rule. They've been really nothing. See how different. What it is. But I appreciate the work. Wow.
I just want to say that I do appreciate the new format. Zach and I did go through it line by line. There are still things in here that he and I don't agree on, and that's okay. But I do think that it's not a bad thing to have a new format and sort of a consistency. But I think that if there are definitely things like I would want to talk about the council vacancies item before we approved anything. Zach, I see you changed the time limit from 3 to 6 minutes. I mean, I think we were all okay with 5. So I think, stuff like that. I mean, I know that not everybody appreciates having all the references in there and all the definitions and the fact that this is kind of long, much longer than our current rules, but I mean, I see pros and cons to both. And so I think there's a lot of good work here and that there are some things that I would definitely need to see changed before I would approve it, but I overall like having a consistent and professional format. I do appreciate that.
Okay. Other comments? Will be my intention then to just put it back on the agenda for a bit of action next meeting. Whether that pass, in the package changes, don't pass, whatever it is, just so we, move on. Jim?
I'm curious to know what people think about for under H5, time and number of comments on page 126 of the packet. Or about each council member speaking 2 times for 5 minutes each. I think that had been there originally, and then we should get it out. So then did you put it in or it's still in?
It's still in there. We just don't enforce it.
It's still in. Okay. So. Yeah, I guess I'm inclined if we have a rule that it be a rule that we follow. So. I don't feel
Yeah.
strongly about enforcing this rule, so then if we don't, I'm inclined to remove it, or I'm inclined to write a rule that we think we do want to follow. Generally, and there's.
I'm about to break that rule, or coming close to breaking that rule. I agree with that, and I think some of it is. Some of this is, there aren't a whole lot of, after going through this, there are not a whole lot of substantial changes to the actual rules that we already have on paper, and a lot of those we still sort of are not, we don't quite hit them, and I don't think it really inhibits our ability to do our jobs, so there is that. I agree with, if we're not, adhering to it, why is it there? But I do still like having something laid out consistent like this, so maybe if we go through and see which ones we don't, or do you think, are there any other ones that? That one always called out to me that we don't ever adhere to that, but are there any others that you would say that you would eliminate? I don't know. Well, I think I just violated one by asking her a question, right?
We'll let it slide this time.
I mean,
Sometimes part of the discussion is a little back and forth.
Right.
I've never felt like that should be limited, so. Dr. Jimmy, now?
I was gonna say the same thing, that there are some of these things that, I would personally see that, this one, for example, because it was brought out, that I'm like, maybe we put something, but not to that specific, because unless somebody sits here for everybody's conversation, time to time, it's very difficult to enforce this, that it really prohibits that sort of conversation. I understand that we don't wanna have absolutely nothing, that our back and forth become, like some board account, 2 council members can, go forever if they wanna go back and forth, or if the meeting lasts forever, but sort of something that in between, that is not, and for some of the other things, I would really like to see in sort of in betweens as well, that is not fully so structured that it's then really very difficult to follow that structure. But also gives us a little bit of room to say, okay, maybe that's it and moving on.
Zach?
So I get to attend sometimes up to 11 or 12 meetings at communities per month. In addition to other stuff I've done in the past. And it feels very foreign and very difficult that you could speak twice for 5 minutes and be it. My observations are that the communities that follow that, the groups that follow it, tend to be much better exercise at getting through complex things. Because it's a discipline. When you start your time, you have an idea, you're prepared of the things that you need to know, that you want to ask. And because you only get to speak twice, you're better listening to the other folks instead of engaging in back and forth. It is tough. I've seen places where go watch, City of Saline. Mayor Marl has a little egg timer that he sits on the front. They go through stuff, they're able to take care of business. I do recognize that it is tough. To get the mind around, but where I've seen it follow, they tend to be much more productive at the meetings.
I think we're pretty productive. Okay, well, I'll put this back on the agenda, ask Justin to put it back on the agenda. And you can, give everybody more week to think about what they wanna move forward now. Yes, sir.
I have a question. So
Sure.
for the areas that are incomplete, leave those incomplete, or are we going to fill those in?
Well, make sure of the local.
Well, I'm just
Give me an
saying,
example,
if,
like,
well,
which one is that?
page 13 in K2C, missing 3 units. Says process for ensuring review both for charter. So, I mean,
Oh, yes, that's one of the things I forgot. So my plan was to make revisions based on what I said here and plug in parts from others. So my aim would be just the minor bits would be shown as red line. Things that we've pointed out today. And what I would offer to for folks, since it's not a whole bunch of revision between now and then, if there are sections that you're really cranky with, or let me know, and I'd be happy to draft alternate versions so that when we debate, we're not having to draft, but that we can plug between, we like version A or version C. So reach out, send me a text, email, whatever.
Sounds fair. Thank you for your work on it. Okay, move on. The topic we've all been waiting for.
I move we adopt the zoning ordinance draft October 17th, 2022. This fellow here, as has been reported from the planning commission.
Motion by Michelle, thank you both. Michelle, do you have a?
Okay, so I will just give you a quick intro to this. And this is even for that. Excuse me, so I'm trying something new today.
Sticker than a phone book there.
I actually saw one of those last time I was in Oxford Township. It was,
A phone book?
yeah, honest to God, in 2004.
Originally, sometimes we do the packet too, and I can tell you that Megan is going to present an updated PowerPoint of the zoning ordinance, just to refresh everyone's memory. As we indicated in the supplement, 2 of the slides have been changed from what was in your packet. So and you have the revised in the supplement, so that it addresses questions that were raised at the November meeting regarding garages and their setbacks, so. I apologize. Okay, we're just. Okay, so. You've heard from me multiple times. Planning Commission has gone through a complete update to the zoning ordinance. And they recommended it to you. They did do this back in October. You've had 2 subsequent meetings where you've discussed it. And the tweaks that were made to the ordinance were minor. One of them being the one Mr. Coy discussed earlier
this meeting. I think we've got everything in the ordinance that has addressed any of the questions before. So I'm just gonna turn this over to Megan, let her go through the PowerPoint update. And I will find it on my computer and be ready when she's done.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Megan Massendenach with Carlisle Wortman. Thanks for having us be back. We were talking about the zoning ordinance about 3 months ago. So this is essentially almost the same presentation. I'll tweak it a little bit, make it a little shorter. Feel free to interrupt with questions. As always, just wanted to say thank you to the planning commission and the subcommittee who worked so hard on this. And most of the, all of the decisions were discussion based. And yes, thank you, Josh. Really inform me about that. Okay. So the process is, the presentation has going through the process, the purpose of the ordinance rewrite in and of itself, how the proposed changes relate to the preservation of Dexter, recommended changes by the planning commission and next steps. Can you see this when I'm here? I step to the side. Is that better for people?
We can move the monitor.
No, I'm council is.
I have it personally.
Okay, so, okay, yay, all right, so, the process we went through.
Hold on one second.
I was just gonna say, that you mentioned that there was a couple of changes, if you can just point out what the changes are when you get to them.
Absolutely, yeah,
Thank you.
no changes here. So the process is the process, we went through ordinance assessments, drafted regulations in 2021, brought a full draft for review to the planning commission in early 2022. Reformatted and refined the ordinances middle of last year, and then started the adoption process in the fall. And during that adoption process, it got a little longer, but also for good reason. There was the public hearing on September 6th had to be canceled. There was a public hearing done on October 3rd. That's when the planning commission made their recommendation. There were some changes made in between and also some staff and consultant sessions. We're here with you right after Thanksgiving, and then looking for either direction or adoption tonight. The purpose of the ordinance rewrite was a couple of things. Number one, there was housekeeping. You had dozens and dozens of amendments in your current ordinance. And so stitching those together, making sure that the ordinances were easier to use. They were up to the standards in federal law, case law, state law. But also coming out of the master plan was to preserve what makes Dexter Dexter. And essentially, the answer to that was a use-based and a form-based approach. Use-based is what your ordinance is now, where primarily it's about what use is on the land. Form-based, it looks at not only what the use is, but what the building form is, what the street type is, and what the location is. And if you look at how the village, the core part of the village developed organically, in the 1800s and the early 1900s, the streets and the buildings all played an influence in the use wasn't the primary thing. So what's proposed is form-based zones. I went over this the last time, but really going to hit the highlights here in that you'll have different regulations or different things that are required based on street types, because Main Street is different than Baker Street in terms of what's going on, what buildings are appropriate and where they should be, what the sidewalk should be, things like that. And then also how big and how small the lot is influences what type of building could be there and the uses. And so each one of these photographs that are called out actually has a different set of regulations around them based on their location, their street type, and the lot size, and as well as uses that are allowed. So why are those locations in the locations where they're proposed? It has to deal with the two types of. You essentially have two types of development, or development patterns in the city. One is how the city was originally set up in the block structure that you can see here, and this is pre-1960. So, and then if you look, that's it in 1960, and then in the next photograph, you'll see this is modern day. You'll see that the city expanded. It expanded in suburban fashion, which was great. It's perfectly appropriate there. And one thing I want to emphasize is that the reason for the proposed changes in the zoning, it's enabled both types of development patterns that have occurred here in Dexter, and to give both equal chance and equal footing within policy. And so you have the 1960 compared to 2020, and then if you look, where the form base is proposed, which is the blue area, those are those areas where it was the original village plat. And then also going up Dexter and Arbor Road and going up Baker Road. The ones where it's going to be use-based, those are areas that were developed usually post World War II, and actually for most of the part, post 1990, when things were, when your borders expanded. And one of the other things, other than that original development pattern that drove where form-based districts went, was the number of uses. So, this is the multi-family, this is the existing land use map. Yeah, this is the zoning map. Originally, then if you look at where the form-based codes are proposed, those have multiple uses going down the corridor. So there's more uses going down Baker, more uses going down Dexter and Arbor Road than you would find in, let's say, the industrial park, because those are single uses, or that you would find in neighborhoods. Or if you look at the neighborhoods that are proposed to be village residential, so those are form-based, you have different uses embedded in those neighborhoods, like churches, vet hospitals, offices, whereas in other places like Extra Crossing, you don't have that mixture of uses. Also, your current zoning does a really good job of preserving what you have downtown and in other areas, but specifically downtown, it's felt that there are things that you can do that would propose to make it even better. So instead of the architecture being consistent within the general area, it's consistent within one block. That's what's proposed. Because of this is a form-based code, only a 2 to 3 story mixed-use building is allowed on that block, essentially. Also, there's sidewalk requirements, design requirements that weren't in your zoning ordinance currently, that varies by street. Sometimes it might say you need to have a 10-foot sidewalk, sometimes you need 5. Again, I'm going to emphasize all of this is for new development. So, and the goal is to bring as many things, to create rules that coded to what you have. So the goal is not to make that unconforming. And the goal is to make what you see downtown, if some of the buildings are down, to make it easy to build those buildings back and make it clear what the city expected in the zoning. And then also another thing that in the downtown that is proposed is that, so you have a 1 foot max front setback now, and it's proposed that could be further setback if they wanted, if the applicant brought a pedestrian plaza or gathering space in. Right now, that would be a kind of a difficult thing to do that. So it allows some flexibility. Also, in your current zoning, if you looked at, let's say, the Dexter Mill, or for some reason was to be redeveloped, that's E1 zoning. Now, those are commercial uses, including automotive uses like a gas station and the special land use, and there aren't any architectural standards. So what's proposed is that become a village commercial. It's a site type, which means that it's a prominent site, and about 5 of those are identified, knowing that these are places that are really special to the community, and putting folks on that they're going to need to really look at what the history is and put that in.
There are architectural standards, and this particular site, it can be a single use building, an institutional building, townhouses and multiple family buildings. And there would be residential, retail and institutional uses, but no auto uses would be allowed. So try to make sure that in the entrances to the village or to the downtown, it's appropriate. Not only in terms of the buildings, but also in terms of uses. Okay, this is the slide that changed. So under current zoning, you're gonna treat these lots the same. So, and you can, so there's no setback requirements for garage placement. That's the phrasing that changed. Both are 7,800 minimum square feet lot and 60 feet minimum lot width. But they're different contexts. And so what's proposed is that they have different regulations. So the village residential, which is original village plat, the garage needs to be at least 5 feet behind the house. Porches can be 5 feet closer to the street because you've had problems with porches and variances and encroachment. The lot size is proposed to be smaller, 4,900 and 49.5 feet width for the lot size. And that goes back to what the original lots were platted at. And then the R1 zoning, so for that's proposed to essentially remain the same. The only changes really are about accessory buildings that are proposed. You've maintained the status quo in terms of there's no garage setbacks proposed. And then it's a 7,800 square foot minimum and a 60 feet minimum lot size and a 60 feet minimum lot size.
Yes, I have a question about that. So you mentioned accessory buildings, and then the example you showed, the second example, presumably is in a neighborhood that has an HOA. We didn't make any change that overrides the HOA.
No, and typically the HOAs are, they are stricter. That's where you have for zoning. Yeah. Thank you, though. That's a good question. Other thing in the proposed zoning ordinance are environmental regulations, and those came out of the master plan. So looking for performance standards, and those would address noise, dust, odor. If on something on a larger lot, there are provisions for the developer to look at wetlands, show where wetlands are, wetland setback, stormwater grading, looking at environmental quality, and then you had regulations before. You have regulations currently in your general provisions that are about construction in floodplain, since an environmental chapter is proposed. Moving those regulations over there was, we make it for easier use, having those in together. So what happens is the current map actually, you see a lot more colors, and the proposed is going to be stripped down again. And there's notable differences between what's proposed. You can see kind of where the original village plat was, and then where those districts are proposed. And so, you know, it's different. But, you know, currently under your zoning, you're treating these neighborhoods the same as these neighborhoods. And if you look at their street patterns and the size of the lots and how the houses and neighborhoods are laid out, they're different. And so wanted to code to that. Any questions before I went on to planning commission recommendations?
Megan, when we talked about, we saw this presentation in November.
Yeah.
I had asked a question about the driveways and the language of no new curb cuts on the downtown A streets or the downtown B, no mid-block curb cuts on the B streets. Well, review the example I think I gave back in November. You know, the Jeffords building was allowed a curb cut for the purpose of underground or under structured parking.
Mhm.
And I think we all felt that was a really good thing, but my read of this language is that we wouldn't allow that in this scenario, and I don't know why we wouldn't want to.
And that could be part of your motion. That, I don't think that would undo anything that you were looking to achieve.
What would you suggest the motion be then?
I
To
would suggest,
Ignore page 518?
no. 518.
How would you change,
I would change it to say that, I would, on downtown B streets, that you could allow curb cuts, mid-block curb cuts. Is you could have the planning commission decide how there's these special circumstances, or you could say if there's proposed underground parking. On downtown B streets, there should be, they should allow curb cuts. It's just on a downtown A street, we wouldn't allow curb cuts. Or if you had a problem with where the A was, we could move that line on the map.
so some combination of that.
Yeah, I just, because of the computer program used and the density of the graphics, when I go in and I open this up, it's half an hour to an hour of my time, and we're charging you that. And if it only make up to me, and Michelle will tell you that it's been me, has been very resistant to making any changes until we have a full scope of changes coming in. So we really look for a direction from you about what that should be. And that would be from the whole council. Because you've had individual members mention a lot of things, and I have a laundry list of notes, and I'm prepared to do them. But need solid direction.
Zach,
Out of curiosity, do you happen to know the section number for the curb cuts?
517.
I'll work on that one. We'll get this.
517, I'm sorry, 518. Starts on access management is section 511. And it's in that section.
All right, any other questions?
That was the only one I had.
Thanks. So the planning commission, when they made recommendations, they had, they recommended some changes. One was BR1 only be where, village residential is currently. And that was because of the amount of different uses allowed under village residential. So, you can see that line between the dark gray and the light gray was moved. Second Street zoning, was to, originally it was proposed at the public hearing that be research and development. In what we heard from folks on Second Street, it was felt like maybe that should go back, to its current zoning of I1. That may be looked at a different time, but felt that had the least amount of change. Then also on, the Heron Street parcel that Mr. Foy was talking about, was for that to go to, instead of it being, village residential, which is primarily a single family zone, that it be village commercial, which would allow his use, in a more expansive fashion. And so that he could continue to invest in the property. And everybody, it seemed like the planning commission agreed that was a good use on that street and it would work. Yes,
And that was me, I was gonna say, to make it the, village residential, would have, and I can't remember if you said, that we made the first property non-conforming. So that's not something we've been for properties.
and then residential uses in the central business district, originally there, the public hearing, none were, it was proposed that none would be allowed, even if it was a house, and especially these that are over here, we heard from people that, there was some desire to use some of these at the house and in some other places. And so it's proposed to allow first floor residential uses on type A and type B parcels. So A is the light gray, E is the dark gray, on downtown B and village streets. So this is the downtown B street, and then, that it would be a village street from here. And so like the Honeybee House could be occupied as a single family residential use. Now, go back. All right. Only other change that was proposed was accessory structures, and this would be for any single family residential lot. Is that to eliminate that lot coverage that right now the ordinance says accessory structures can only take up 25% of the lot. It's a lot of measuring, it's difficult for staff. You've got you've got an overall lot coverage anyway, so that's a constraint, and you have constraints in where they're proposed. That also, we have the distance from an accessory building to principal building to non-residential district was proposed at 25 feet. Based on feedback, it felt that 10 feet was appropriate, and that would be going back to what the current standard is. And then looking at maximum height of accessory buildings and public facilities, industrial and RD. Originally, in the public hearing copy was 14 feet, but the ZBA could allow it up to the maximum height for the building district. And then again, in discussions and looking what works and what you have built here, it was felt that it's better that the maximum height is either the height of the principal building or the maximum height for the zoning district, whichever is less. So, again, short but sweet. I know that you had a lot of questions also about parking at the last time, and how what the degree of flexibility was for a different development, different developments. And essentially, we don't have a slide on that, but essentially, right now, you allow planning commission to give waivers. That would still be the same. And then right now, in the VC, the PC can waive and then require a contribution. What's proposed in the zoning ordinance is that if a section on when there's on-street parking, public parking and municipal lots, for those to be taken into account within a 1,320 foot buffer, they have to submit a parking study. Very similar to what the Encore did and to what 8180 Main Street did. And then if the planning commission waives, but then they can waive, and then there still can be the payment in lieu in the village commercial district for parking. And that again, the planning commission would still be the waiving body, and it was just that keeping the same precedent that you've had where the city council is the body that decides the amount of the in lieu payment.
Okay,
So a while back this fall, I think you guys did a decent amount of interaction with the public, I guess, so you had some, one-on-one, that sort of thing. Do you feel like in this version, are there any major resident concerns that were not able to be addressed or accommodated in some way? Or do you feel like there's any part of this where there's still people who are, we're going to be immediately negatively impacted? And I don't know if you can, you don't need to name names, but are there aspects of this that are still perceived to be controversial by?
So there's multiple questions there.
Yeah.
Nothing in this new ordinance makes anything that's currently in place worse. The whole, it's improved. So for example, some of the residents on Central Street between the tracks and the city boundaries. The, the ordinance that we put into place doesn't make anything worse. It actually makes it better. The slide that Megan showed how, the current, if the Dexter Mill went away, because it's a C1 zoning, we have an auto use there. This new form-based code that we're putting in actually makes it better, because we couldn't have something like a auto use. But property that's between those residents on central and the DPW yard, those are currently allowed to be multiple family. This ordinance doesn't change that, but the residents aren't happy that that could change someday. And it could, regardless of what the ordinance now or.
But these recommendations were based on a lot of that input that we got from residents. So, and specifically that moving that line of where the village residential 1 and 2 were allowed. Because you can see here that village residential 1, that public hearing was proposed to come all the way up. So across the majority of the village. And what we heard from folks is we really don't want that. And it makes us feel really uncomfortable. And so what is recommended by the plan commission is to take that line back to where it is now on Broad Street. And keep that line. You could look at it later if you wanted to change it, or if somebody wanted to bring a rezoning or something. And then the changes back on Second Street from RD to industrial, in some ways that was a compromise. Because really what that street needs is more study. And that might be its own form-based corridor. But we've heard from the planning commission that they felt the most appropriate place to do that is in your 5-year update, which is coming up in 2 years. And so, the compromise was to bring it back to I-1, which is the allowed uses that everybody knows. So,
And then one final question. So you mentioned that there have been sort of individual comments made from either this body or other bodies, and you're just looking for more specific direction. I guess it would be helpful to me to see, I don't know if you actually have a physical list or if there, I mean, without having those all in front of me, I'm not able to say which of those I want to implement or not. So if that is the sort of direction you're looking for.
that is the sort of direction. I can give you the list that was from the last time for the zoning ordinance. I have my notes with me.
Or if it's in a packet that exists somewhere or something.
I think Michelle's listed some of them in hers. I think if I can look at my notes quickly and see, but I think the main things that have come up that need to be addressed are parking, and whether you're comfortable with that standard. As the mayor mentioned, on a downtown B Street, whether there could be a mid-block crossing or a curb cut. And then I think those are the main things, but let me get my.
And then just a more minor point, it just seems like margins shift throughout the document, just as I've been scrolling through the PDF. So I don't know.
And those are,
We can clean that up.
we can clean that up.
Yeah, Jamie, I think, I don't know if this is the easiest way, but there's if you can scroll back a couple on the presentation, there's a slide that shows the commercial business district boundary and the different street types within it. Yeah, that one, or some version of that one. Okay, you keep going.
I mean,
The formal code.
No, she's gonna do it.
that one?
Yeah, so. The dark line that is Jeffords turning into Forest. To me, yep. I don't know, maybe,
So there's no curb cuts here, and what I heard from you, Sean, is that what you're concerned about is that if there wanted to be a curb cut here, that would be allowed. So,
Well, the reality is there is a curb cut.
and then it's non-conforming. And it's fine and can exist.
So what we could do is I looked at that language, instead of taking out no new curb cuts, take out no. New curb cuts may be allowed, I think the word was allowed, on B streets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And then change that line to.
And then that line would get changed.
Change to a B.
Is that something that the entire council would like? Because that's what
I
I'm
need
saying.
help, but I don't think to make motions. I can suggest them.
That's why I asked, because I'm trying to help you.
Is this
Yes,
map also
go.
on page 232 of the packet?
Uh,
Or would it
Page
be on-
156 of 260 in the regular packet,
what page?
165.
What is the map that we're talking about?
I was gonna say, what, second, what Councilmember Griffin said about the list, if you have a list that you just bring back that, you know, we can look at and everybody can say.
So all of the questions that have been asked.
Yeah.
Have been documented or in your packet.
Okay.
We've made those corrections, post planning commission recommendation. So there's the October 28th and different questions and written answers, and then subsequently November 28th. More information and, clarifications. Excuse me, I'm sorry. The only things that weren't baked into the ordinance, and not in either of those two memos, are the garages that we discussed today, the B Street and curb cuts. And I think those are the two things.
Yeah, those are the two
Okay.
things. So you had for the subdivision.
Yeah, the subdivision one has a totally different.
yeah, I read somewhere in your report, I like the alternate language for the cul-de-sacs
Right, that we would bake in,
as opposed to the hard.
correct, the no, you can't have them. Right. And there's the range as was, that's part of the subdivision ordinance, so.
Which is part of the subdivision?
The cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
It's talked about in the back. So we do have a motion on the table by Zach, second by Griffin. To adopt it as, Zach, hold it up, as is.
Mhm.
So what were the discussed amendments?
I would personally like to see Forest Street between Jeffries and Broad change from a dark line A street to a B street. I think that's the only example.
With curb cuts,
So the curb cut is.
maybe allowed.
Maybe allowed, and the language in B. Yeah, the B language on page 518 needs to be adjusted to allow the cuts, not. I like the second part of it, where it says access changes are permitted where drives can be consolidated or repositioned for sharing. Those, that's fine, it's the
Right.
first sentence.
It's just the
that I would-
first sentence, right?
Would it has to be adjusted.
And the one, sorry,
Sure.
and the one street changing the name. I'm just-
Yeah, got that down.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other thing would be the garage
Yeah, changing from an A to a B.
on the page with Zach and our houses on it. Like those two slides.
We just changed context. We didn't propose any changes to the ordinance with that. What I recollect from in November 20th, the way that we had phrased it was it indicated that there were regulation changes for the street that was in Dexter Crossing or the suburban style street. And so those, it wasn't proposing any changes there. It was just more clarification language.
So it would be what's on this slide, on 175,
Yeah, yeah,
unless we. We don't need to make any amendments to this
No.
motion
no,
to get what's on this slide.
correct.
Okay.
So is there anything else besides the downtown B streets and the curb cuts we were talking about?
Only if you wanted any changes to the parking as it's proposed.
I'm moving then to add the downtown B street curb cuts language discussed.
Is there support?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, so that would be an amendment to Zach's original motion we're talking about. Zach,
Point of order, could someone repeat the proposed change?
I can do my best to try, Zach. I believe that on page 518 of the draft ordinance, the first sentence of section C2, the downtown B streets would say mid-block curb cuts or new curb cuts are allowed, I don't know, permitted to allow, you know.
New, I better it done, new mid-block curb cuts may be established after the date of the ordinance,
On downtown B road,
on downtown B roads.
and then the map, which I don't know what page that same map is on, but the section that.
And that was gonna be in Article 11, which is the form-based code. And you would just say, for village commercial, form-based home.
No, that's the downtown. So,
In the second business, I was just gonna try and change Fourth Street from deference around the bend to Broad to a B street instead of an A street.
so I think maybe for precise language, what I would suggest is that the regulating plan on page 11:21. The downtown A street shown on Forest in between Jeffords and Broad be changed to a downtown B street.
Perfect. Zach?
So as I look at it, the only thing that may have an effect would be the old Jolly Pumpkin or Turnip Dancer's Edge, but they have access from a B. And the old Dapco site there, from a design perspective, I would much rather have them with access from Grand or Broad instead of facing downtown. So I don't know that we really need to change that, as long as we make it clear that you can have access from B streets. I think it's a bit stronger with the intent of the master plan if we say if it's necessary for access. So like if you've got an alley, we ought to press them to demonstrate why they can't get access from the alley or the other spot before we say start cutting up the street.
So the only reason I thought it made sense to make the dark line on dashed line is we've had a lot of discussion about the prominence of Broad Street and that being the connecting corridor from downtown to the 3045 Broad area. And if you don't have the ability to bring the cars in off of Forest Street, you're gonna put them all on Broad Street and back through the PNC parking because it's one way. I think that's counter to loading off the vehicle traffic and we're trying to put pedestrians there.
Right now, this is,
That's just my.
Is it true?
Changing it to a may.
So he's not
provides
disagreeing,
the
he's
structure.
not disagreeing with the language.
Right.
Yeah, he's talking about the dark line.
Well, and I would also offer under C1 that there is an existing curb cut right now for the loading bay. So this language would allow them to use that curb cut for redevelopment of the site. Would that be correct reading?
you can maintain that curb cut down.
It already slopes down, so we're already going in the right direction.
Sure. Okay, we'll just change the language of B. It just seems silly that, I know you don't have the Jefferson building drawn into the CBD, which is weird that we are proposing to carve it out like that.
It's because it's a PUD.
I know why, but I mean,
I get your point.
materially in the special business district. It seems weird to pass something that says that curve that otherwise wouldn't be allowed.
Just to be clear, then the amendment that is on the floor is only that the language in section 518 would change. No.
No, actually, the moment the motion that's on the floor is to change the language of 518 and change the street.
And change the street.
So, Joe, go ahead. 1 second. Any other discussion on this? Okay, so I asked to call the vote, we're voting on the amendment to the original motion. Everybody clear on that?
So the vote is just to amend the motion.
Just to vote to amend the motion. Okay, please call the vote.
Senator
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Hubbard? Yes. Aldag?
Yeah.
Scott?
Yes.
Michaels?
No.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so we have the original motion by Zach, seconded by Jamie. Now been amended to include those changes. Is there anything else proposed to change? Okay, so now please call the vote to approve the original motion as amended.
Griffin?
Yes.
Slack?
Yes.
Aldag?
Yes.
Senator?
Yes.
Michaels?
Yes.
Hubbard? Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you for your good work on that.
Thank you.
This item M2 is consideration. Thanks for attending, John.
Yeah.
Good night, John.
New business item M2 is consideration and continued participation in the redevelopment ready for living program. Motion to either continue or not continue. Zach,
I move that we can continue participation in redevelopment ready communities program.
you move that we continue.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second by Griffin.
I think Michelle. Well, this is Michelle's item.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the important one, and I do this.
Huh?
No, that's
That was
it.
a ha-ha.
That's the water tower.
You mean redevelopment ready is an important item today?
So, you are following up on the information that I put in your packet a few meetings ago regarding the MEDC changes to their program platform. The bottom line is you no longer have to be engaged working towards certification or certified to be able to access money that is provided through NISHA or MEDC. That's a really nice thing. Quite frankly, to be honest, it was the only reason we re-engaged in 2017 in the first place. And MEDC does know that, and so they're letting all the communities that entered into the program know that you don't have to be anymore. They do not, but the question is, regardless of that, do we want to stay engaged with redevelopment ready or not? And the reason they want to know is, one of the other things that changed on their platform is
instead of working with communities like Dexter to allow for the site plan review or permitted, or what they call by right uses, to be either administrative, I'm sorry. Instead of working with communities like Dexter, who have a two-tier system where it's planning and then council making decisions on the by right or principal permitted uses, they're drawing a hard line. They want as a best practice either administrative review and approval or planning commission review and approval. That's not a step that council has embraced, even welcomed in the past. So they just want to know, what does the city want to do? You can make that decision without taking a formal motion. Just let staff know, and I'll take it back to them. But if you feel you would prefer to do a formal motion, you can do that too. If you decide to leave, on the one final comment, if you decide to leave the program, doesn't mean you have to give up or not pay attention to those best practices, because there are some that are very good. We've incorporated some of them. As they continue to tweak them, they could become useful in the future, putting the whole site plan review one aside.
Yeah, well, can you just remind us, so the way I'm reading this, and I think what you just said is if we did continue with this, we would be removing us.
You would, if you eventually want certification, you'd be expected to remove us, as you just said.
From site plan review.
Correct.
Can you give us an example of where that would have been, like what that would have been practically in the last year?
I'm trying to think of one that was, so, if I remember correctly. Actually. So variety dye and stamping, the multiple expansions varieties that variety dye has done, that would be one that's considered a by right use. But whether it was just a straight, say they were setting up a brand new construction, that would be a by right use. That would be the type of project that comes in under straight site plan, doesn't require special land use, isn't done as a PUD. And that's the type that would go either all administrative in staff and or planning consultant or planning commission only.
And what would be, like, how would we decide that either or? Between administrative and planning commission?
I'd suggest baby step that was a change that, if the change was removing council, I would recommend baby step, because that's a paradigm shift for the community, to then compound that and say, okay, we're gonna just let staff take care of all of that. It'd be like trying to digest a whole.
I guess my question, let me clarify, what would the process be to make those baby steps, like to say it still has to go to planning?
It's an amendment to the ordinance, because you would take council out in every, iteration of a straight site plan. The question would become, well, it still have your two-step process, preliminary and final site plan review, with the option of something that maybe is a smaller project, or developer fears they can bring everything in with one combined site plan. So the process is the same, it's just the text amendment to take council out.
Okay, and then my last question is, and I know I should know the answer to this. Like that, but what was the Kids Land Montessori, that wouldn't fall under this, would it?
Actually, that would too, yes, that would have been one, I couldn't remember.
I thought I
Whether that had a special use component to it, it did not.
Yeah, but because we had so much debate on that particular one, That's why I was wondering specifically
Mhm.
about it. Because I think we even had debate about that when it came here.
Mhm.
Yeah, especially on access and number.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, I like our two-step process. Personally. Maybe it's because I've been involved in it so long, but I think it's helpful. Okay.
So. The opposite of what Councilmember Hubbard said. So what things would come to council, that what would not be as straight?
If you were to, if it wasn't just the by right site plan,
Yes.
anything that's a special use, plan unit development, anything that requires a public hearing. So, everything but a by right. So, Mill Creek Brewery has a special land use to it that would still have to come in front of the commission and council.
That's tasting room, sorry.
I'm looking for that one right now. Let's see. That was,
Yeah, I think that was a SLU.
that had a special land use component, so that would have still come to it.
So now question?
Thank you.
Sure.
So, if we don't participate or formally engage, we still can apply for the funds.
We can still.
We still can do the best practices.
Mhm.
The only thing that we won't be getting is the certification.
Yeah, we don't have the, yes, we're engaged, designation, or like you said, the certification.
And maybe I should nail this by now, but what would that certification bring us that we won't get?
Certification brings with it, some assistance that NEDC give, what they call technical assistance, and, they help market your development sites.
David,
I think I am comfortable with what I know right now. Taking city council out of the by right of that step, I would want it, planning commission to still be involved. And I think my bigger question has been the combined preliminary and final site plans. I don't know, separate, it's related to this, but not part of this. I mean, my preference is that there are not combined preliminary and final site plan reviews.
But for things like the industrial park, where, the city was the developer of that park. So the roads are there, all the infrastructure is there, detention, all that. So when a company comes in, whether it's for a brand new establishment, or they want to add on like Variety has done, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go preliminary and then final. It's an unnecessary step to make them do, because the base development is already there.
Sort of something like a PUD or a special land use or.
Most PUDs come in preliminary and then go to final, because they're usually more complex. It requires that flexibility from the developer, as well as from the community. I can't think of a PUD that's come in and has come up.
Zach?
So as a maker of the motion, I'll show you why I made it to stay engaged. We don't have to go to consummation. We don't have to cross the finish line. I think there is value in a lot of the things they said, and paying attention to it is good. I've seen communities where it's done a lot of real good. With respect to, there's value in being it, that they'll, if we engage with them and say, here are sites we want to help redevelop, they go out and market for us. They go find companies that are looking for places, developers looking for residential stuff to help us do it. even though it's not necessary to access funds now, it wasn't. And then it was, and now it wasn't, it isn't, so it would be necessary again, and I suspect if we're people for MEDC money and we're equal footing with someone else who is, they're gonna look to the folks who are. And I was actually the one who made the motion to put in a resolution including this, so we can get the money. As far as the taking council out of approving by right site plans. We touched on that here. Special land use still comes here, planned unit development, the big ones come here. While we are extremely flexible in parking, we are extremely rigid in the process. I've worked in communities where staff, you're putting in a new Burger King that goes through staff. Because the legislators have put in all the criteria. And if you don't think your staff can administer it, then you need to get new staff. And I think our planning commission is one of the best I've seen. We've got folks who really know, really well experienced, that can handle by right. I will say to one of the, we didn't need the whole elephant, but previously, and correct me if my memory is wrong here, we used to require special land use for outdoor seating on the sidewalks in front of the pub, in front of Always. With the changes for the outdoor parklets and all that stuff with COVID time, that's now administrative for staff. And we've survived that transition. If we don't think staff and planning commission can do what, either we need to get good training for them or better folks on it. So that's why I was comfortable staying engaged. Don't have save the date, but it's generally a good program.
If I could add one comment, I understand, and I agree with a lot of things Zach said. I'm saying you go on the board, Sean says, maintaining versus taking out. The one thing I think is really important to understand, if the thought for taking PC out is that it will make the process for a developer quicker to have an either administrative or PC. That's really good in theory. But in reality, what holds up a development in this community, I can't speak for other communities, but in this community, is whether a complete application has been submitted or not. Which is the case for 8180, it has been the entire time. When you don't have a complete application or an application that's submitted and is consistent in a written narrative with what you're presenting on the site plan, until you, as the applicant developer proposing it, reconcile those differences, the leap of faith that staff and the planning commission has to make, much less council will gives to you, is just, it's a chasm that is not easily navigated. So that, just throwing that out for you.
I'm gonna jump to that 100%. If folks bring in garbage plans or incomplete plans, that gums the whole thing up. So as practice, and sorry for the nerdy stuff, whenever I get a chance to touch the site plan review process, I'd like to put really strong language at the front that says zoning administrator reviews it and determines it's complete before setting any date, before getting out on the agenda. It's not, you bring the stuff in on the due date, it's determined to be administratively complete. And if you're gonna wait till the last second, like a telecom company, to drop off plans that no one's seen, you gotta make sure your guys, if you're a hobby developer and you're doing it, you're probably not gonna get that next meeting because they're gonna find 5 or 10. I've got a PUD right now with, gosh, it's like 300 units in it. They don't have plans for 3 of the buildings in the thing. They have garages that go over retaining walls. But they don't have that hard check break for the zoning administrator, so they're gonna go to the planning commission, and it's gonna be another 2 months before they get back, because they're gonna tear them apart, all the things that are on there. So I would absolutely say that would be one of the things I would love to get in there is give the zoning administrator a hard break before things pass through. That's the biggest thing, garbage in, garbage out. And if you can stop the garbage earlier on, they're gonna complain about it and scream about it, but they'll find out the process worked better like the day after Taco Tuesday.
So I 100% agree. However, the process and the policies in place have always been, regardless of how good or bad that plan is, if somebody wants to go in front of the planning commission, you put them in front of the planning commission. If they get skewered, it's their fault, and staff and consultant will make sure that the review has been thorough and the applicant understands what revisions need to be provided. So again, we're talking about shifts in policy. Staff's willing to basically do what you want. I just need to know what you want.
Well, the motion in front of us, by Zach and second by Jamie, is to continue participation in our RRC program.
Who made that motion? Please?
Zach did.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Jamie seconded. Wow.
One last question.
Sure.
So what Zach was just saying about garbage in, garbage out, staying in this program
Doesn't change.
doesn't change that, doesn't help that. Okay. Just want to make sure.
Go.
So at what point do we have to make the decision on how the process is gonna continue or implement change or?
Only if you want to achieve the certification.
Correct. If you wanted to achieve certification in 6 months.
So the presumption is that we're working towards correcting all the things that they want us to correct, if we're in the program.
Yes.
If we're not actually working towards them, then we'll never get the certification. We're in the program, but we're not, like you're picking and choosing the best practices you want to follow. Or the ones you like, but I mean. You can pick and choose the ones anyway.
The comment that from the examples that were given, that council was involved. I found that involvement beneficial for the city. So I think for me, since at least for now, we can get the money, we don't know if that changes or not. If we can use the best practices and such, I would prefer that council stays involved.
Any last comments on this side? Okay, so. Remember, we're not voting on changing council in the process now, we're voting on whether this administrator stay in the program. Okay. So, yeah,
That was clarification.
okay, please call the vote to the yes vote to stay in and a vote to not.
Schlaf,
No.
Griffin,
Yeah.
Semi Pharaoh,
Yes.
Waldeck,
No.
Michaels,
Yes.
Hubbard,
No.
yeah.
No. So motion fails 4-3, to 3-4. Want to do it? M3 is the consideration of the direction of water tower ban colors. Anyone want to make a motion?
I move to approve the design on the top of page 216, removing the gazebo.
The white or the blue?
The white, so the top one.
Got it.
Support.
Motion by Griffin, second by themselves, to approve the top picture, the white bulb with the black lettering minus the gazebo. So,
So, this was very interesting because last Saturday when we talked about this on Sunday, I drove to Novi and everything I saw on the road. The only things I saw was water towers. So, I really color wise, the city of Plymouth was, white with, said Plymouth on it with the green that we originally, or very close to the Dexter green that we had thought, and it looked, the color looked nice. But also, I think just the name by itself. There were a lot of it that was just a name printed in one color on white. And the ones that stood out were the ones that actually had something else. Now, Novi has done a very whole different thing of, you know, it's a very copper colored the entire thing with leaves on it, and that's all to me on the other extreme, but I like the green. It was, I think there was a conversation that it was less aggressive too, but I really like the gazebo just because it sets us a little bit different than just a white water tower with a name on it.
Jamie?
Kyle Marsh had reached out and shared some thoughts and even some renderings of things, and I just before the meeting emailed Josh and Justin. I don't know if we're able to pull anything up. Just to summarize. Yeah, my concern with the gazebo is that from far away, I don't know it's going to appear like anything. It might just look like a blob from far away. Not somebody who's a graphic design, visual design expert or anything like that, but I'm imagining from far away, you're gonna see something that's dark and then letters, and it's not gonna be clear what that is. Kyle has a comment in his email that says he likes the logo in general, but adding it, the gazebo to the water tower, he thinks somehow diminishes them both.
Diminishes what?
Diminishes them both. That you found, like, a picture of gazebo on a water tower, and maybe they don't seem related, I'm not sure. He then went ahead and did put together an image of a water tower that is kind of a blend where it's colored almost halfway up to the orb part, with maybe kind of a strip, and then it says just Dexter on top of it. I think there was some other water tower that he had seen where it was partially colored, and
Yeah, and with rally racing stripes,
I don't think
I think our water tower will faster.
some people maybe, I think some people also commented about using serif fonts as opposed to sans serif, and I guess that's something that I think generally too, when you're wanting text to be more readable, you usually go with a sans. I don't know if it's serif, I don't know how you pronounce it, but we have both of those fonts are serif. And then there were also comments about, do we need to actually say Michigan? Everybody knows what state we're in, but it seemed like some water towers do say Michigan or the state and some don't, so I'm probably like, keep it simple, just say Dexter on it. I don't even need the city up. I guess those are my general thoughts on that.
What was the motion?
The motion is to have the top picture, which is the light bulb, with black lettering, without the gazebo, the city of Dexter, without the gazebo.
I'd be open to making it green, if anybody would like it better, if it's green.
Wow.
The whole water tower, I mean?
The lettering.
Oh, the lettering. So the serif and sans serif thing, right? So it's half and half on both of these. Am I wrong?
Yeah, right.
So,
Dexter on both though is.
right, it's serif, but that's a huge word, so I think it's fine, in my opinion. I mean, I hear what you're saying about the gazebo. I don't know. I'm not the one that's looking at this. There's hardly any of us looking at this other than you. And I do agree that from a distance, that may turn into a blob. Well, I don't know. I think, and again, I really don't I don't care that much, but the font on the lower one, maybe in black on white.
I like that.
Because
So
then that way, then the city of isn't so small, but then we have something more than just. It's less, it's not as aggressive as I keep saying. Because you do have the two different fonts.
you say it, so yeah. say that.
Just to have the bottom one on 216, but with black lettering and a white water tower.
So you want that.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that too.
I would offer that the with the raised news with the gazebo on there from a distance, it may get shot down, mistaken for a balloon. So it's probably better.
Dan?
I could live without a gazebo. I could live, but the white to me is gonna help us in doing the maintenance that we need to do on that. At least for me, when I'm colorblind and with the mildew and the stuff that we have. So the white, whatever letters. I'm good. Whatever font you guys want.
I can make another motion? Is that a Robert's rule thing? Can I just make motions on that?
You can, yeah.
Okay, so I guess I can make a motion to approve the one. So a whitewater tower. With the text on the second water tower, Dexter, Michigan, in those fonts, but well, in black.
Okay, so do you want to withdraw your first motion and see exactly what you're up to?
Is that a Robert's?
Or we can amend it if there are objections from the body.
Either way. We're gonna do-
I'll perform, I'll make an emotion to amend my motion.
Okay. So, the motion to amend. To keep the white water tower white. But to use the lettering that's shown on the second image. But, and font. But black lettering.
I'll second. Good question.
Okay.
One side or both sides?
That was actually gonna be my next question for you.
And like, what's considered the side? I thought about that too, like, where do you want?
I assume opposite sides, but.
Yeah.
Well, right, but
Facing
we're,
which way?
right, yeah.
Well, one has to face you now.
Exactly.
I mean, do you want to see
I
half
think
of it?
it's customary for them to be north south.
Yeah, is there
I would,
I'm making that up.
if you think about north and south, you got both coming, one coming in, one going out.
Yeah.
But that's if you do two.
Our roads are laid out the other way, though, you know, diagonal. So,
Yeah.
so
a, it's south, you would see it from.
Nowhere.
Park. Yeah,
If it's south, you can see it from coming in on Baker.
it's gonna
And
be big enough, but this is not gonna just be like, it's not a square, or it's, you know,
yeah.
you're gonna.
huge. You could always do one side just facing.
I would do
downtown
that,
area.
I would do, oh, facing down,
Well, just the city in general.
yeah. I feel like you can't see it from, like, I feel like if you do see it, you see it
I mean,
from,
do you want to see it if you're coming, you know, into the industrial park?
I don't know.
If we leave it blank in the motion, it would be up to staff to determine which direction and how many times.
Yeah, I think we can figure that out.
I think it looks really nice, so I wouldn't mind.
Okay, so the motion to amend is to have a white water tower with black lettering, but we have on Dexter, Michigan, in the bottom, as shown in the bottom picture, bottom of everything there.
Mhm.
So that's motion by James, second by Joe, to amend the motion. Please call the vote to amend the motion.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Griffin.
Yes.
Schlaf.
Yeah.
Sunny Pharaoh,
Yes.
Michaels,
Yes.
Aldag,
Yes.
Here,
Yes. Okay, so now we have a new motion. Or a new amended motion, it's white lettering, is what we basically voted for before. Then we have any further comments? Okay, please call the vote to approve the motion as amended.
Griffin.
Yes.
Schlaf.
Yeah.
Michaels,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Aldag,
Yes.
Sunny Pharaoh,
Yes.
Yes. You're welcome. New business item 4, discussion of the naming policy. That was beyond the agenda, so I will do that.
Yep, so those of you who spent any more than 30 seconds, you know I'm a fan of policy and processes. And I happened to talk with some folks at the school, on the school board, and they said, hey, did you guys know we have a policy for naming things? And so I thought it would be good for discussion here. So that going forward, we have a bit more robust process, if we decide to name things after people. So
Any comments? Yeah,
I like the idea of putting something into place and this seems like it applies to more than just naming things after people too. I didn't know if this was in reference to what we were gonna call City Hall even. So I think given that we have a City Hall and given that we might at some point have a fire station, I don't know if there'd be a name involved there. And maybe as a fine time.
It's, frankly, the record is, that's very, very, very station one. I mean, that's.
Right.
Well, did you have?
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar. I think it makes more sense for schools because you don't just have like high school, middle school, elementary school, you know, I mean, but if we kept it with, if we're gonna name City Hall after someone and we had a policy, sure, but I don't think we need to add bureaucracy to trying to name City Hall, or city offices. Like, I think that's, I mean, I don't think we need to get involved at that level, but I do, you know, I mean, again, I think we've all said that what we did with the park, we all have parks in the right place, and I do think that in retrospect, some of this is helpful. Would have been helpful, but I don't think it needs to extend beyond naming things after a person if we're gonna do something.
Okay, so you want to think about this for a little bit, you guys want back on the agenda, do you? Anyone have the next step for this?
I do have a quick question. For park planning, for the folks who've been around a while, Warrior Creek, or Warrior Park, now Mill Creek North. Were there adventures with that? Renaming, it just, okay.
No, I mean, I think that when the creek became visible on the south side and the context of Mill Creek, it made sense to just rename it. I don't remember a lot of discussion on it really at all. You know, because the whole park was linear and it runs along the same creek, whether north of the bridge or south of the bridge. And the fact that we had it connected in the way we haven't connected, if they weren't connected by the walkway under the bridge, I think the comment at the time was that it could be logical for two different names because they're in two different spots, but the fact that you flow through. I think that was the extent of the conversation that I remember anyway. Okay, well, Zach, would you like this brought back in 2 weeks or a month, or what are you thinking?
Well, I would. If I had magic wand, it'd be nice for staff to reach out to other communities and see if they have something similar. Just so we can get a royal sampler, you know, not spend time doing it, just calling out and saying, hey. And then bring it back. Not next meeting, but the meeting after that, so I have ample time to look for it. And then if we like the idea, we could direct staff to bodge something together with the things that we like, and what we see.
Okay. Without time certain on that, then when we have a couple extra samples, then we'll put it back in that. Okay. Is that fair? Or Josh, where does it get to that? Okay, new business item L5, discussion of public safety facilities.
Yeah, so, at the last meeting, council had some additional questions regarding, topic of public safety facilities. Staff worked with, Chief Armstrong to get some responses, pull some data together, and, that information is included in the packet. So I don't know if anybody had any questions on what was provided or any additional questions or discussion of the next step.
I have a question on page 222. I don't know, Chief Armstrong, if you would be the one to answer this. You talked about the runs by keyword and 474 of the runs involved EMS coming out of Station one, an EMS run would typically involve which vehicle? Is it ferry or is it?
It does depend on staffing level. As we have reliably fully staffed stations, then it likely will use a smaller vehicle. But if you only have one person on duty, they're gonna likely take the engine, so that in the event they're out on an EMS call, get another call, they've got that truck with them.
So the direction that you're looking to go with staffing longer term might, it would be different, you would expect a vehicle to be different than what's going out now?
We've actually ordered a medical response vehicle, which we're gonna call it a rescue, but it's gonna look to everyone else like an ambulance, and it's gonna be capable of transporting a patient if needed. So that would definitely be a.
So in theory, that's the vehicle going out for any extra call.
Well, the last several meetings have been about asking questions and getting it. And I usually have said, is there anything else somebody wants to speak? We are in the month of February and we're gonna try to put the bond in place so that we can start the millage in July. We need to be taking action on this meeting or the next one. In my opinion, right?
So it would probably be the next one, because we need to, staff would need to provide the bond resolution.
So,
I think especially since we're really done, to offer a motion, move that city council designates the current fire station located at 8140 Main Street as the continuing site for the fire station in the city of Dexter, and direct staff and consultants to proceed with renovations and enhancements at the current station at 8140 Main Street.
can you just read that one more time?
The city council designates the current fire station located at 8140 Main Street as the continuing site of the fire station in the city of Dexter, and direct staff and consultants to proceed with renovation of the current station.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Also do that.
Okay. Questions, discussion, Jamie?
With respect to the bond and the bond resolution. Does the language in that resolution require that a location be named?
I don't know offhand. I do know that in speaking with our bond council, they strongly recommended that a location be selected before going out to the bond. Whether or not it's required as part of the actual formal resolution, I don't know. I'd have to check with them, but bond council did strongly suggest that basically everything be decided prior to issuance.
So then my follow-up question is, what action? So the motion that's on the table, my understanding is that motion is not binding. A motion was made some years ago that council no longer considered 8140. And it passed. And council is considering 8140. So I'm trying to figure out, is there an action that council would take that would not be easily undone to tie it to a location, and might naming it in the bond resolution be that action?
That would be, yeah, that would be. Named it in the on resolution. That's what we would be putting out to the banks. And that's what we'd be moving forward on. And, you know, once you get money involved, it's much more difficult to undo or untie that.
Yeah, and to your first question, you know, one council can't find another. Was something that can be undone,
Right.
right? So that's what, you know. You understand, what you get it.
Right, right.
Yeah. Good question. Yeah.
I have a question for community development director. It was my understanding during COVID that we weren't able to put a trailer out there for housing quarters for the firefighters because it would be an expansion of a legally non-conforming use. If we do anything at the current facility, aside from painting it and remodeling and putting carpet down, it looks like an expansion of a legally non-conforming use. Is that bar still in place with the zoning ordinance we just adopted?
I have to check. I would have to check that in order to answer the question. If I could clarify, the temporary housing trailer, if my recollection is correct, it wasn't that it was an expansion of the non-conformity. There are remedies for relief. This is one, for dimensional issues. The issue with a housing trailer is our ordinance doesn't allow that type of temporary structure to be connected to public utilities. And for no further period, when staff did that memo, it wasn't to say this can't be accomplished. It was more to invite PAFD to work with staff on what the options were, as what council will have as well. And as opposed to it not being done when you read it all.
Another question for staff. It appears to me that this location, in order to facilitate not having a 90-degree, requires roughly a 25 to 30-foot expansion of the curb in front of the building. Is that permitted with the zoning ordinance we just adopted?
I have to go back and double check.
All right, and as I look at it, because this property isn't a separate parcel, it's part of the park, we would be increasing the area that's under lease to the DAFD, which requires, if we're selling, which is more than a 3-year lease, for legal purposes, a vote of people.
So the problem, you know, at least 50% of the building is currently under long-term lease to the DAFD. There is no lease renewal that we undertake with DAFD.
But for clarity, the footprint gets a lot bigger than what they will have exclusive control and use of more area than they do today with this structure. The park will get smaller. The building footprint will get bigger. All right, I think I'm done with my 5 minutes for now.
I wanted to comment on some of the.
Sure.
And so on page. The aerial view,
Early,
yeah,
so that's page 230. Or maybe that's.
yeah, 2-3. So I think what struck me about this is something that I've kind of had the sense of all along, is that I just don't like how the building fits on the site. to get what we need to do. I don't like what it does to that site, the area. So I appreciate having the aerial to better visualize that. I'm concerned about the expanded sidewalk opening onto Main Street. I'm concerned about the additional parking along Alpine, concerned about all the utilities, including one that we just put in there that's gonna have to be undone. I'm concerned about how far it extends into the park. So points I've made in the past are just that for almost the same price, it seems like we can get what we need at Meadowview. On top of the fact that we're not, some of that cost isn't being spent to find some temporary facility, which is baked into that cost. I've talked about other potential uses of 8140. We've seen from Kyle Marsh ways we might even condense the site at Meadowview to accommodate additional housing or some other development there. Taken all together, all the information we've seen across all this time, I still prefer Meadowview. And I don't know how else to make, if anybody has questions about why I think that, because they want to understand it or whatever, I'm happy to answer it, but my guess is everybody here kind of knows what they want to do already, so I just want to make sure I've said once and for all why I prefer one site over the other, and I think with this additional information, it just, that visual is helpful to me to see that.
Yeah,
I have some information I'd like to share with all of you. I have currently went to each council member individually. Sean, I'm sorry that I didn't get to you because I've got some family problems, you know, with the hospital and different things. I'd like to share it with the public and maybe if there's any residents. It's my 37 years history of working for the city of Dexter. Through my 37 years, I've performed every job you can perform from the DPW level, water level, wastewater level, and I ended my career with being a superintendent for 10 years. I have been through, in the last 37 years, I've been through buying this building one time over 30 years ago when it looked nothing like it looks today. Okay, it was bad. We spent money, we spent time trying to do the upkeep, people dropping off trash, graffiti, that stuff. And then we sold it back 2 or 3 years. You're gonna have to excuse me on my timeline, like for what I'm gonna go through, because I might be off by a few years. But I think you're gonna get my gist as I go through this. Then we sold the property back. The economy was not doing well when we sold it back. We lost money on selling the property back. Obviously, we bought this property. Somebody's came in. It's a wonderful place for city office. Then we bought the property at Broad and Green. Okay, and I'm guessing that we've had that property for 20 years. Is that a good guess? 15, 20 years? When we got that property, it had a building basically all the way from Grand, all the way down to Jeffers. And we had Ace Welder, we had Gary Clapper's welding in there. I think we had a fitness center in there. We had the dance studio in there. Then, years later, we bought the Dan Hoy property. On that property, we had a farmhouse, we had some outbuildings. With them two properties comes a lot of responsibility, okay? Trying to maintain what is there. Landlord, if you can feel that, because we had people, you know, in at least the Broad and Green portion of it. With that comes a lot of responsibility, money that you can't budget. You know, it's hard to budget for things like graffiti, gas lines, water lines breaking, a lot of stuff going on. And with trying to maintain those properties, I'm not saying that any of these past council members or present had bad ideas for doing this. I'm just trying to explain to you that the resources that we have at the city don't support stuff like this. We have water, wastewater, street, we have jobs to do, and here we're stuck in the middle along with the city manager. We're stuck in a situation of trying to maintain what we're trying to do and what our goal is at the end. It's very costly. It's hard on the people that we have, what we're supposed to be doing, and we're pulling ourselves from. So then we have Hickman's, which I love Hickman's. I love their breakfast in the morning. I love, you know, all of that. But there's things that's got to be done there. maintenance has got to be done. And it can be as simple as hiring somebody to put a door on, or we spend a week down there on a sewer backup with five people from 3 different departments trying to figure out how we're gonna assess it, how we're gonna do it. We're trying to save money, but we're not getting the city work done that we should be getting done because we don't have all the resources. We don't have 30 people. So on top of that, then you throw in the MAP property, right, which we've only had a couple of years. But here is the start of it again, okay? We've got to mow it, we're buying a brush hog for the front of the Bobcat. You know, we got garbage, we got a lot of stuff to do. So as I look at this and have been sitting in these meetings and have been a lifelong resident and sat back from 1985, we had plans for Mr. Willoughby, the show of redoing the 8140 station. So as I go through my 37 years, I mean, to me, to go to the MAP property, which is a good site, what you guys have done with both these sites is gonna be one hell of an improvement for what we're expecting our extra firemen and women to perform at their best. It's gonna be a hell of an improvement. But for me, to go to the MAP site and leave 8140 like we've done with these other properties and thinking as being the superintendent and what that has involved and what things we haven't done to try to maintain and keep these, I don't see it. We've got a problem that we all know exists at 8140. We have an opportunity to make that good, to make a fire department there that we can all be proud of. And also our firemen can be too, men and women. But if we go to the MAP property, we're gonna leave this property. We really don't have a plan. All of us got great ideas what we're gonna do with it. If we don't, what are we gonna do? That's gonna be sitting there. I don't wanna leave the problems that we have for Michelle, Justin, and staff, myself. So I really like the fact that 8140 becomes our new fire station for all of those reasons. And my 37 years of working for the city of Dodge. Thank you. Wow. I wasn't more than 2.
I want to start by saying that, you know, I seconded this motion. I've been back and forth on this issue. This is very difficult. There's no perfect solution. There's obviously pros and cons to both, but when I sit back and I look at it in Dan said about having another property to maintain. And, you know, we're not a large city. We just don't have the resources. I don't know when we would have the resources to do that, period. So the reason why I decided to second this is because I fully believe that in addition to not having another property to maintain, I would like to see it put on the ballot to sell the MAP property. And I know it has to be approved by the voters, but I would like to sell that, which I think is, in my own opinion, would be an easier sell than 8140. And put all that money back into the fire station. And here's why I say it would be an easier sell, because all of these problems that we know exist at 8140 would still exist if we put the building on the market. So we are going to have to make all kinds of concessions. And I think it'd be easier. I just think it would be easier to do it that way. And so when I look at it, it's also, I mean, again, there's no perfect solution, but I've been assured that our firefighters can operate out of both locations. And the one on the table, the plan for 8140, let me just remind us all, is not final. So we have time to look at it and make adjustments. I mean, neither of them. So the fact that our department can operate on either station, I have to sit back and say, what do I think is best for the city as a whole? And so for me, the consequences of moving the station from where it is because of the building maintenance and because of what I think is the possibility of gaining money from selling the MAP property. And I think that all things considered, that's better on the whole for the city. You know, I mean, we're making a huge improvement for the fire department either way. And, you know, I just had to consider it from both sides, and that's what I come to.
So now,
It's my turn. So I have been also, all of you, been thinking about this for a while, and, you know, people talk about their backgrounds. I'm a librarian by training, so for me, it's always going to all the parties involved and everybody who touches the work of the city, the work of the fire department, and, looking at things from a very holistic perspective. Nothing we touch in our city by itself is the only impact. Everything impacts everything else in the city. And every action taken on even something that seems to be on one specific thing impacts a lot more. So for me was to look at the entire thing together and think of it as what is, as a council member, for me being the good steward of the taxpayers' money. And what can I see as the vision for our city that is beneficial, not only for today, but what is our vision for the next 50 years or so? Because our fire station that we are talking about today is what, about 70 years? So whatever decision we are making, not only for the fire department and firemen and women, but also for the city is a very, very long commitment. So I put a chart, that's how my brain works. I have been involved in knowing a lot of buildings that are up for renovation. When you're trying to renovate an old building, and a building like what we have in current fire station, there are a lot of unknowns. The designs that are made for us to look at push the envelope to the maximum. There is no room for any issue that might come up. From this building, we know that there were unknown things that we have to deal with. We don't have any room in the budget for the main location. MAV, on the other hand, is a location that it's a plot. The unpredictability is a lot less. I'm not saying there aren't things if you start digging, but generally that's a lot less than trying to work within the limitations of an already existing building when we don't know what the foundation looks like. What are the other structural issues and things like that. Also, the plans that are put together for Maine does not include an elevator, and because the design as a whole gutting of the building, it cannot be grandfathered in an elevator there. The other thing for me is the vibrancy of our downtown. The location for the current fire station is a very nice area to be able to do something about it. I understand the concerns that we have buildings that we have not done things about, but that's a problem separate that we need to solve. Because if we think about every single building and we make just decisions because of that, and that because we have not put resources or attention into buildings that we have not maintained, or we had not resources to maintain, please don't get me wrong, in the work of the DPW, but that's a planning matter we need to do. That's a bigger issue. We solved this one, the other one, the next one can come around and be there. So for me, we need to solve that, but the location of the current fire station, it's at the middle of our downtown. It's a fantastic place to create something that people can enjoy, can participate, and add to the vibrancy of our downtown.
The other issues, some other issues that have come up, and I want to think about them because they're all valid and they all should be thought about. Our streets downtown, if the new location is Mav and trucks go down Hudson and Second, the condition of the streets, the sidewalk issues, all of that again comes to me about this comprehensive perspective. Hudson is a Pacer 2, Second is a 5. So we have the opportunity of putting or fixing those roads very soon, which then we can plan into what a fire would be and add some of the benefits in that perspective in terms of the conversation on sidewalk that came up. Another thing that actually is very disturbing to me when it comes up in the conversation about fire station is being it close to Cedars, our senior living, and the other side being our schools. None of us should put ourselves or each other in a position to even have a conversation of whether our seniors are more important or our students. So that's to me a topic that everybody is important in the city and we should consider their health and safety. So at the end, for me, it comes to the growth of our community, the sustainability of our community, a comprehensive perspective on what do we want our city to look like, including our fire department. And I was also very encouraged to see the changes that are being brought by DAFD. The hope of adding to the staffing, that helps with the calls, not that many going out of the city of Dexter. The work that Chief Armstrong is doing with the neighboring communities also allows for more collaboration, meaning that there are less calls going out of the city. MAP site will provide us more flexibility, not only from the perspective of a new building that I described with Maine, but also allows us to expand and have the things that might not be just necessary, but also the nice haves. We will not have any money left for having those nice haves in the main, but we could potentially have in MAP. So at the end, putting my hat up as a librarian, as a person that has been sitting through a lot of remodeling of the buildings and buildings that were built in 60, 70 years ago. I can see the issues coming down the path, as I can see them every day at work, and it just, I cannot think of that as a good option for the taxpayers' dollars. So with all of that together, I think the best location for us for the new fire station is MAP. And I think we need to think comprehensively about our roads, about the vibrancy of our downtown, the resources we need for all of our buildings that we need to manage. And that's my perspective.
Thank you. Zach?
I'll start out with some direct comments from what I heard. So I was the one who brought up that we should set a hotel deck minimum, because I don't think the city ought to be a landlord, and I was really disappointed that this body died. Now, I understand the concern that it's a historic property, but there are lots of ways that we can protect it. First, right of refusal, we can put deed restrictions on how it's used, so I feel that. I would offer that we do have a quote for how much it would cost to tear the building down. It's not an architectural gem, it's a historic foundation, but it's concrete. It would cost less for us to clean the building, scrape it to ground, than it will cost us to relocate the utilities for the parking. Right, there are a lot of utilities, that's really expensive parking on Alpine that we get no value out of. So I would be happy if we don't have a plan in 6 months, we scrape it down. This is a big long-term decision. They say average fire station, 75 years life. That's how long it exists before you replace it. So I would say we're not thinking about now, 5 years, 10 years. Are we making a decision that's going to bone future councils, future communities, because they don't have any flexibility. I do agree, look at the size of that curb cut. That's gonna suck the life out of downtown. It'll suck the life more out than if it's straight clean and we can see the park and the little kids and whatever else is going on down there. There are design-wise significant challenges from trying to fit, well, I'm not gonna use the sugar thing, but this is me trying to fit in 30 waist pans. If you look straight out front of Bay 1 and Bay 2, there's about an 8-foot drop between where the current parking is and the curb yard. Either we're gonna have to pay to bring the road up and change geometry for other stuff, or we're gonna have a really stupid slope shooting the fire trucks out. Fire trucks are big axle vehicles tend to not like to do hills and lots of change in topography. Again, some more little detail stuff, but phase 3, 4, 5, and 6. We heard here that it's extremely expensive to raise the roof. Old buildings, your contingencies are much more expensive. You don't know what's behind the wall when you tear it out. Either we're gonna go cheap, keep the roof where it's at, or we're gonna say to our firefighters, we don't care if you can't get on top of the rigs in the building. OSHA has said it's too short, you're gonna get your head chopped off and hit things, you cannot stand on top of this. There's no way that we can expand the width of those bays so that they can have the distance they're supposed to have around the machines to clean them inside, to leave the doors open, to pre-stage their equipment. Again, another technical thing, all these aren't the final plans, there's only so much you can fit into a space unless you have a TARDIS. This requires us using the lower bays for trailer equipment. You can't make the turn to back it in on there. Look at the stuff, I've driven trailers. If you've driven trailers, you can just do the eyeball test and that does not work. The optics from the character, the front doors aren't facing Main Street. If you want to get in the fire department, you have to go to the back of the building. Is that the face we want to have for a public building, that you have to scurry around the back, fight for parents to try to get into this thing if you want to burn permit or talk with the chief? The entrance to the police department requires you to go over an elevated walkway. It's a drawbridge, it's a fortress. Is that, again, the face that we want to give to our community? There's a huge opportunity cost with keeping this facility here. In the end, when you look at the numbers, again, I'm not going to talk about all the people I've talked to in my experience, but we're going to get less building for more money. We're going to have less flexibility in the future. We're either going to have to pay extra for the trades to be in longer if we renovate and try to run out of the one spot down in the basement, or we're going to spend a bunch of money for a temporary facility, or we're just going to say there's no firefighters in downtown for a period of 18 months. And again, even though it's a 75-year time span on that, would you be comfortable telling your neighbor the closest fire truck is 8 to 10 minutes away in our coverage area? So I've done the test of what would it take for me to be happy with the site, and in order to get this site the same quality and the same service, the same protection for our firefighters, it's not feasible to put that money in here with what we're willing to spend. I would also raise a point of order question, that this is listed on our agenda as a discussion item, not a consideration item.
Jamie?
Yep, I'll be brief. I just wanted to circle back to some of Sanam's comments, just that I really appreciated them, and so I just wanted to echo the point she made about really having a long-term comprehensive vision for what we want that area of downtown to look like, and how we want to be able to provide services for the entire community, and with pending changes in the fire station and staffing, how those things might change, and moving to Meadowview then may not raise some of the concerns that we've heard raised. I do also appreciate Dan's comments about our ability to maintain buildings, but I agree with Sanam that if there is an issue with resources we have available to do that, then that's a separate conversation we need to address there. And I wouldn't want to make a decision about where we're putting a fire station for 75 years, because we haven't been good at maintaining other buildings. I also appreciate that I don't want the city to be in the business of real estate. I don't want us to be in the business of buying and selling property and being a landlord. So generally, I don't want that. In terms of what is a long-term vision for 8140, how do you realize that over time if it isn't the fire station? What really struck me in this packet alone, there are 3 proposed developments for this area of downtown. 3045 Broad, Brandon, that's taken some time to come to fruition and is, you know, still in the planning phases. We have the 2 properties on Grand Street. And then we also have the Mill Creek, very new, being proposed right across the street from the creek. I cannot imagine that that is a property that if we decided to say, sell to the DDA, so the DDA might sell to somebody else. I think there would be people interested in that property for development. There are people interested in this area for residential development. 3 in this packet alone. I can't imagine that 8140 would sit vacant for that long. And I guess to that point, if we're having difficulty maintaining it for whatever reason, I'd be happy to see a cost estimate for raising it. That makes it easier to sell. If somebody's, you know, there's no taste for the structure as it currently exists. I'm not suggesting that we hang on to it for ourselves and the city stays heavily involved in ownership of that property at all. I do think there's an option where all things related to the charter amendment, you sell to the DDA, and then the DDA has an option to do what they're doing with 3045 Broad. So I'm trying to think very long term, and I altogether as a package, to me, that's why Meadowview is more compelling.
So,
Thank you. I have a question, and Jane, you reminded me. So the current fire station and the proposal that is for it right now, to me, is not a fully developed the same way that the MAV one had time to spend on. Maine did not. I appreciate David Gasson and the time his team has put on it. I think there are still some things that are not put there, like the elevator. And other things. To me, that's really to the top of our financial package. The 8.4 we have from voters and the 1 million we put aside. If we start doing renovation in that building and we have issues that go beyond that, where do we get the money from? If we have issues with MAV, we have potentially the ability of having that things redone in a way that things are smaller because it's a new building versus a renovation. The other side of it for me, as Jamie mentioned, if the answer is we sell one to fund the other, the property in Maine is a lot more valuable and has more potential for developers because of the location. My thought.
wow,
I don't think we can necessarily make the determination of which property is more valuable. I mean, maybe we can, and
I did a study.
we can, but can I just say something first, because I'm not done. So, because real estate is not black and white like that, first of all. Second of all, I do understand, I totally understand what you're saying about solving the building maintenance problem that we have had in the past, but to me, that's not apples to apples, that's a completely different kind of problem. That is something that I just don't know if a city this size can continue to amass property and really find a sustainable solution to maintaining it. If we're not going to see the type of growth that we've seen in the last 30 years, which we're not. And so for me, that's, I'm all for solving problems. But like, it's just like, that one is tough, it's tough, and I don't know, I just don't know that we could get there. So that's where I'm coming from with it.
all of you have said a lot of well thought out things. And think anybody is necessarily wrong in anything that's been said. So now I think you're right, the 8140 concept has not been fleshed out to the details of the other one. It was. To that end, there will be opportunity for refinement on it if we were to go forward with that 8147. I've always liked the station where it is. I actually think it adds character to our town where it is. My experience with 3045 Broad as you'd think that we could get a lot of money for that property too. And I won't dwell on that long, but there's been 3 development teams that have come in to talk about that property. And not one of them has offered more than $1 yet. Because they can't make the dollars work. It's some combination of the fact that the density on the site requires parking. Parking is going underground. And it's not easy to do on these sites that have been around for a long time and that have their challenges and issues. So I don't know the real estate market well enough to talk about what we could or couldn't get there. But I like that this is a public use next to our public park. And I like the response ability from this location better than I do the MAB one. I haven't been shy about that for years. But you know, whatever happens in this motion, we need to work together, and we haven't had a motion to take the ball forward like this in a long time. And even when we bought the MAB property, it didn't advance fast buying the property. This would be a very historic determination. I'm prepared to support it.
So, point of order, you're allowing a motion under item that was described as discussion.
What would Robert's rules say?
Well, Robert's rules doesn't care. There's no discussion or consideration, but our rules and our practice has been to, if it's discussion, we're not going to take action.
Than our practice. You know, I feel strongly about that. But it's also not, it's not like we haven't had all sorts of conversations about this and opportunities for people to decide to make motions. Do we have a hard rule that says that thing?
Well, what I will offer is that that if this motion is accepted and acted on, it's gonna destroy the trust of council members who aren't gonna trust this. If it says consideration is garbage now.
You don't think that's been going before?
I didn't hear.
Okay, I'll try. One,
I guess I'm confused about the trust issue, because I feel like at one point when we were discussing consideration versus discussion, I wanted everything to be discussion first if it was something we hadn't thought about before, and your response to that was, I'm sorry, I know I'm breaking a council rule, but it was that, well, anybody can make a motion even if it's discussion.
Yep, I'm asking for clarification because this body has had established rules that are followed.
But that's what I'm saying is, no, fine, sorry, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think that we have a responsibility to the extent that we can. Of course, informing the public of whether we intend to build on something or not build on something.
And so that's,
Excuse me. I agree that we've done that. I have no problem if this motion is on the next agenda at all. I still intend to vote for it. But that also doesn't preclude a council member from making a motion. There's nothing that can stop some, that this body from acting that way. Do all the places on the next agenda?
No.
No?
I mean. First of all. Not this council, but council was talking about this for 5 years. That property has been purchased 3 years ago, 4 years ago. You know. Some people might say, well, I mean, go to the forum meeting on Saturdays. They'll tell us, we've been looking at this for years, what's taking you so long? You know, get going, let's go. Well, what's happening? Some people say that we're stalling, that we're just pushing it down the road, not doing anything about it. The fact of the matter is, we don't start now, we can't get the bond, we can't do the millage this year, and it's gonna push us back an entire year. So everybody here has talked about this for a long time. Everybody here has voiced these opinions for a long time. Dan and I have only been here 3 months. So, you know, we've gone through, I know Dan has talked to people, I've talked to people, I've done as much as I can. Before I got on council, I said, I don't know what I want to do. I want to see what the data is. So I got here and I threw all the data. And I've been saying it every time we meet for a workshop, every time we discuss on this, the same reasons over and over again. So I'm done. I'm ready. I was ready before. And now we're to the point where if we don't act, our not acting is gonna prevent us from proceeding. And, you know, that's just irresponsible.
Jamie, that's all?
Yes, I will be frustrated if this council votes to keep the station at 8140. I will be frustrated. It is a personal decision to me because of how much time I've spent thinking about it, studying it, as it is to all of you. So obviously, this is why the environment is what it is here. What I think frustrates me more is that it seems confusing that Zach raised the point he made about the consideration versus discussion item. This is why having rules matters. This is why following the rules that we have matters. So people know what to expect. I don't really care how people vote. I mean, like I said, it will frustrate me. But what frustrates me more is when we have something written down that says, if you come during pre-arranged participation, it's not a conversation, we're just gonna listen to what you say, and then you'll sit down. But if we like what you're saying, if we actually invited you here during pre-arranged participation, then we'll engage in a discussion with you. The community council needs to know what to expect from a meeting. I can appreciate that there's discretion on the part of the chair that sometimes things become less formal and it feels like we're just friends chatting. Maybe that's why we go to rules that say you talk twice for 5 minutes a time, because then people know what to expect. There's nothing more frustrating. We've talked about this with the satisfaction survey, the difference between your expectation and reality. That's where satisfaction or dissatisfaction comes in. That's why they say, don't expect anything, you'll never be disappointed, because your expectation's here, so reality can only be at or above it. I feel like we have no expectations, unclear expectations, when it comes to what even is a meeting, how do we run a meeting? And so this is a total major tangent, but this is why it's relevant, because in these moments, when passion is high about the particular topic, and then we start hand waving about what the process is, we can all do better than that.
So now,
Coming to this meeting, I knew this was a meeting that we'll all talk about the location. And I knew this was the meeting that, and pretty much I knew everybody's thought process in there, or at least their decision. And to me was that, that was not the problem, and it still is not the problem. We all make the decisions on every single topic that comes based on our research, based on what we think is right, based on our own conscience, and that's how it goes. And at the end of the day, when we walk out of here, we are a community. We had avoided the conversation about location as a body. I think my hope was that if we come here under discussion to have that, when we had done that individually with each other, and we would give it a chance to have that conversation as a body together, as a community together, and be able to ask questions from each other. Maybe the wisdom of the group comes out together. I don't mind there was a motion. I actually had written a motion at some point about the bond process at some point of the conversation to make it. But I just have to say that I am sad and disappointed that the conversation about location, the first time we are having it, not because of rules, but just as a group, started with a motion. Because that puts us in a defensive and one person at a time having to discuss their point of view and really not leaving the room for a discussion that this was intended. I don't think our votes will change next time, so nothing, we can just be done with it, but I'm just disappointed that
So I just want to say one thing about the process. And this is on me. This is the way that I've been thinking. Jamie, I understand that you're frustrated. I understand, I understand all of what you're saying, but I have to tell you that maybe I was misinterpreting it, but I came into this meeting, every one of these meetings, when there was a consideration item, anxious out of my mind that someone might make a motion. Because I knew that was always a possibility on the table. I'm an anxious person, so I was always preparing for it. And so I never meant to second a motion that was gonna throw the whole process into this frustration for other people. Because I've just always sat here thinking, and I probably should have said that out loud, that that's what could happen at any time. I do hear what you're saying about the discussion. I do feel like we've danced around the discussion about the location. But I also agree with what you're saying, that you don't think it's gonna change. I don't think it's gonna change. I'm tired of us dancing around it, dragging our feet, and yeah, maybe this is not the most elegant and non-frustrating way to move forward with this. But sometimes I don't know. I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to say.
Hold on. Zach?
We had a member of the public come in today to talk about the consideration item zoning ordinance update. If our agenda and our information had said consideration of public facility location, there would be people out here. I know there are 5 that I could call up and get down here in 30 minutes. This body has egg on its face from a quick decision to name a park after someone. If you don't know how much it's gonna cost to change utilities, to relocate utilities, what we're gonna do for temporary facilities, those are huge unknowns. You should know that before you set ship on course here.
Wow.
Given the time constraints of whether or not we would be able to issue this bond for this year or not, I think that we need to do something. Whether it's, I withdraw my second, I don't know how this works, and we bring this back as a consideration item with the bond right after it. I mean, I don't know if that's really gonna change anything of the actual way that this is gonna go down. If people wanna come, they can come. We could get people on either side of this issue, as I've said before, and I will say until I don't live here anymore, which may be when I die, there is never gonna be a perfect solution to this problem. There are going to be people who are going to be mad at whatever decision we make. There are gonna be some of us that are gonna be mad at whatever decision we make. But we have to make a decision. And so I don't know. I mean, can we put both things on the next agenda? And just go from there?
It doesn't get withdrawn unless the 2 of you want to withdraw.
I'm asking.
Who wants to keep it?
I know you do.
There's no reason to withdraw it. If somebody wants to postpone it, they can make a motion to postpone it.
So I'll move to postpone it to the next meeting. And have it back as a consideration item for facility location.
Okay, motion by Zach to postpone it.
Postponing the agenda item.
Yep.
A second.
There's a motion by Zach, second by Jamie. To postpone this until next meeting. We have it on the agenda as a consideration items about her. Everybody understand the motion? Any discussion needed on the postponement? Wow.
I have a question about that. I mean, I guess we could, how do we make sure, well, if this is what the majority of us want, how do we make sure that the bond language that we could amend at the next meeting is also on the agenda as a consideration item?
You can make another motion after to instruct us to know what you want to do, what you expect in the packet.
I mean, do we have to make a motion or can we just agree to have that in the packet?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, based on the conversation that I've heard, I mean, it'd be my expectation that I would bring the bond resolution back for next agenda.
Would you prepare 2 versions?
I could,
Is it one line different?
I mean, it would be parentheses, location 1/location 2. You make this selection.
I see no further comment on the motion to postpone. Please call the vote to postpone.
Michaels,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Sunny Pharaoh. Hubbard,
Yes.
Aldag. Yes. Schlaf,
Yes.
Keo.
Yes. Okay, so this item will be on the agenda as a new business item M1. Next meeting, or unfinished business, I guess, there it goes. Sorry, unfinished business L1. And, the bond resolution will be M1. Correct. We are down to, well, have we concluded our discussion on facility review? Bid facilities. Okay, is there an orange participation? Anyone in the audience? Michelle?
While we've been into the meeting tonight, there's been a shooting on SU, and the campus is locked down. It's like I said,
In the science, I'm very glad. Yeah. Thank you for that, let's know that. Is there anyone online that would like to, has a hand up for? No hands? No one in the audience, good. Okay, council comments? Yeah, start with you. Thank you. So,
If anybody has any questions about the point I was trying to make earlier, please let me know. I hope I made it clearly, but if I didn't,
Regarding, regarding what?
why process matters.
Oh, okay.
Zach,
Pass.
what?
This is totally off topic, but I say it every time. I saw the theater production of high school this weekend. It was great. They did a good job. I'd like, if anyone wants to go next time, let me know. Talented group of kids, and it's always a fun afternoon. I usually see the matinee.
Joe?
I don't think that's on topic at all. For council comment, I don't have any other comments.
Okay. So we talked about, there's no listed proposed item agenda items on the meeting under item P, but we'll talk about until what we're going to be. So with that, I'll set the motion for adjournment under. We got. We have a motion to adjourn?
So.
Perfect. Ms. Now, all in favor, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.